It's found in John chapter 13, verses 31 to 38. The same reading we had this morning. We will obviously be looking at the second half.
Evening all. So John chapter 13 verses 31 to 38, so just a short reading. So when he had gone out, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and glorify him immediately. Little children, I shall be with you a little while longer. You will seek me, and as I said to the Jews, where I am going, you cannot come. So now I say to you, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all will know that you are my disciples, if you have one love for one another." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus answered him, "Where I am going, you cannot follow. You cannot follow me now, but you shall follow me afterward." Peter said to him, "Lord, why can I not follow you now? I will lay down my life for your sake." Jesus answered him, "Will you lay down your life for my sake? Most assuredly I say to you, the rooster shall not crow till you have denied me 3 times.
Obviously not going to go over everything that we looked at this morning, but it's important that we just look briefly at some of these earlier verses, just so that we have the context of what we're looking at later. I mentioned this morning that there's no coincidence that these words came forth after Judas had left the room, because of all that Judas bore with him at that time. He had gone on the dark road that spirals forever downward, until his very heart was possessed of Satan himself. And now he's gone to commit the very act of betrayal. And Jesus repeats this word, glory, glorified, 5 times in verses 31 and 32. And we see how intertwined his glory is and the Father's glory. You can't separate them. God is one. And just as Christ displayed the Father to a sinful world through his death, the heart of God would also be seen. You see, there is nothing between them. There is unity of purpose and of mind. Christ would be glorified. He would be revealed. He would be seen. Who he is would be seen. His heart would be seen. But it's not just Christ. We see the Father in all that the Son is doing. And then we have that lovely term of endearment, only used once in all of the Gospels, where he calls them my dear little children, knowing full well the difficult days that are ahead for them. Again, his heart is always focused on others before himself, isn't it? And in verse 33, he uses this expression which he had already used with his opponents, but he now uses with his followers, "Where I am going, you cannot come." He's making them aware that there's a transition, there's a change. Things aren't going to be as they were before. I am having to go. Imagine how his disciples felt when they heard that. Never easy, is it, to announce that you're leaving? And that's what he's doing. He's telling them that he's leaving. And not only am I going, you cannot come. It's not a case of we're going somewhere different. It's not the we and the us anymore. It's I'm going, and you can't come with me. And he understood the pain that was behind those words. He understood what it would mean to them. But then, as we look this morning, he gave them a new commandment. He reminds them at this time of extreme stress and trial that they must remember their love one for another. And they must remember that the love that God has given them. Our love is not just to give to God. It has to be demonstrated in our love one for another. And the quality of the love is the same. Jesus says, just as I have loved you with the same love that I have loved you, knowing full well that the cross is literally around the corner. He says that is the standard of love for each and every one of you. And it will be a sign, it will be a witness to the world that you are my followers, that you are my disciples. It has to go deeper than our words, doesn't it? It has to go deeper than our intentions. It has to be revealed through our hearts, through our actions. And then we come to verse 36. And it's no surprise to any of us who is the one to voice, no doubt, the question that is in many hearts. It's Peter, as is often the case. He often is the first. It doesn't mean he's the only one. It just means he's the first to voice it. Very often when questions are asked, there's other people in the room thinking, oh, I'm glad they asked because I was thinking the same. And I'm sure the disciples felt the same. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, where are you going? Lord, where are you going? He wants to know where he's going. Think about all that is in that question. Where are you going? How is Jesus going to unfold and unwrap that one to Simon? We know physically he is going to the cross. We know that he is going to death. We know he is dying our death. But we know the resurrection is going to come as well. We know that death itself will be defeated and he will live forevermore. In that question, where are you going? All those things are in the answer. Way too much for Peter to take on board at this time. But ultimately, when you think about it, where is he going? Well, ultimately, back to the Father. Going home. He always knew where he'd come from. He always knew where he'd return. Home. And we can identify with that, can't we? I'm fully aware that there are those in this room today who have had that pain of separation, of going, and having to say goodbye for a time. Jesus understood this wasn't going to be easy. He doesn't attempt to try and explain to Peter everything there and then. Where are you going? And the answer is, where I am going, you cannot follow me now. Isn't it lovely how Jesus saw right through the question? You see, Peter wasn't asking where are you going because he wanted to know everything that was to be accomplished. He wanted to know where he was going because he wanted to go with him. That's really what's behind the question. He wanted to know where he was going because he is a follower and a disciple and a believer and he wants to go with him. And Jesus reads his heart, doesn't he? Where I am going, you cannot follow me now. But you shall follow me afterwards. We mentioned earlier that Jesus had used this expression. Not only there in verse 33, where he says, where I am going, you cannot come. In some of the earlier chapters of John, as I said, when he was speaking to his opponents, those who were against him. Let's just look at the slight difference in the wording we find there. Because in John 7, verse 34, we read, you will seek me and not find me, and where I am, you cannot come. Notice the wording, where I am, you cannot come. Chapter 8 and verse 21, Jesus said to them again, I am going away, and you will seek me, and will die in your sin. Where I go, you cannot come. Jesus understood the barrier of sin. Jesus understood that on those two occasions that the people who were asking him about his mission, asking him about where he would finally end up, Jesus understood that the barrier of sin would mean that they couldn't follow him. You won't be able to come. But his words to Peter are different, aren't they? Because he's speaking to a different group of people. He's speaking to his followers. He's speaking to his children. Where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you shall follow me afterwards. What a difference that little phrase means and makes to all of us, doesn't it? Where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you shall follow me afterwards. The promise of the Father's embrace, the promise of home, the promise of heaven, is for all of us, isn't it? What's not within our gift, and it's not within our control, is when we make that journey, when we make that step. But the lovely thing is, he has gone before. Whenever that step comes our way, whenever the end of our time here on earth comes to an end, we are following him. And only believers follow him on that step. You see, Jesus has died my death. That is part of the privilege of being a Christian. That is part of the contract of when we give our lives and our hearts to him, he has died our death. It amazes me more and more when I stop and think about what that step would be if I didn't know him. What that step would be if he had never revealed to me who he was. What that step would mean if he had never opened up my heart to the fact that he is the Christ, the Saviour of the world. The step of death would be an awful step, a tragic step in every sense of the word. But he has taken that very step for me. He has stepped from life into death. He has died my death. That when I get there, he's already gone before me. And now, that step is not a step of death. That step is a step of the life that I've already received. The eternal life that has been granted to us from the day that we surrendered our lives to Christ. The only difference is that instead of that life being shared here on earth, it will now be shared in heaven. But the same life, there's no break in the life. There's no end to the life. There's no death to the life. Why? Because he has already gone that way. And when we follow him, it's a different experience now. Because he has defeated the power of death and of hell and of the grave. How much of that does Peter understand? We have no idea of knowing. But how grateful Peter was when he finally came to the point where he did follow his Lord. How grateful we are when we do come to the end of those days. We've had the privilege, haven't we, of being sat by the side of people as they prepare to make that step. And as people often say, to live the life of a Christian is something that not many people choose to follow. But many would love to die the death of a Christian because it makes all the difference. Where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you shall follow me afterwards. Jesus is trying to take the edge off the pain. It's not a separation, never to be reunited. Yes, there is the pain of separation, but there is the hope of reunion. And it's not a hope that might happen. It's something that will happen. It's just we don't know when. But we will follow him. We will be with him. Did Peter take on board what God was saying to him? Obviously not. Because how does Peter respond to those words that Jesus had said? When Jesus had opened up to him, it's different for you, Peter. The opponents of me, those who are against me, they had the phrase at the end, you cannot come. I'm not saying that to you, Peter. What I'm saying is you cannot follow me now, but you will follow me afterwards. It's the exact opposite. You have an assurance that you will be able to come. You will be able to join me there. But notice what Peter says to him in verse 37. Lord, why can I not follow you now? It's a question many of us have asked, isn't it? It's not within our gift to decide those things. Our times are in his hand. Lord, why can I not follow you now? This is not up to us when we follow him. It's not up to us when we take that step. It is for us to serve him while we're here on earth. However long that may be, it is our duty to serve him here while we can. There are things that we can do for him now we will never be able to do for him in heaven. There are things we can only serve him in doing this side of the grave. He has a work for us to do on earth. He has an eternity to share with us as well. Peter said to him, Lord, why can I not follow you now? And then look what Peter says to follow that up. I will lay down my life for your sake. What a bold claim that is. And I bring your attention to the very start of the phrase, I will. I will lay down my life for your sake. How does Jesus answer that? He just changes two words. He changes the order of one and he swaps one out. That's all he does. Instead of I will, he changes it to will you. I will lay down my life for your sake. Will you lay down your life for my sake? Peter, you got it all wrong. It's not a question of you laying down your life for his sake. No, Christ will lay down his life for your sake. So you see how close he is? He's just got it the wrong way round. He thinks there's a need for him to give his life for Christ. No, it's the exact opposite. Christ is to give his life for Peter. Christ is to give his life for us. It's a noble gesture, isn't it? But you see, the fault is at the very beginning. That phrase, I said to you, I will. You see, it's not our will. It never is. It's not what we do for him. That is never the basis of our salvation. Yes, there's much we can do for him after, but it is not the basis of our salvation. There's not even 1% that you are responsible for. He has done it all. He has paid the price completely. No, Peter, you cannot earn anything on this. It is not of your strength, it is not of your merit, it is not what you will to do. And by no means will you be asked to lay down your life for me. You've got the right thought. You've just got the order wrong. It's not you laying down your life for me. I am about to lay down my life for you. I will. Will you? Will you? Is that really what this is all about, Peter? And again, Peter did lay down his life for Christ. He laid it down in service. He laid it down in death. He did fulfill those words, but not of his choosing and not of his timing. And this is definitely not the day when that is to be called for. God's plan of salvation is about to be unfolded, and Peter's heart fully understands that Jesus is talking about death, and he understands that he has to be willing to pay that price. But it's not now, it's not today. There will be a death, there will be sacrifice, but it's not going to be Peter's, it's going to be Christ's. He will lay down his life, not just for Peter, but for us as well. Jesus could have just left it there. But he chose not to. He chose not to. Why? Because he loves Peter so much. He could have just left it there. Jesus answered him, "Will you lay down your life for my sake? Most assuredly, I say to you, the rooster shall not crow till you have denied me 3 times." Isn't it amazing how wrong we can be about our own strength and our own convictions? Peter thought he was stronger than he was. Because it's not by might, and it's not by power. It's by his Spirit. Any strength that we have is not of our making. Any strength we have is of his giving. Peter, you think you're so strong. You're making this bold claim in front of all the other disciples that you above all of them will stay true. You above all of them will be willing to pay the price. But I'm telling you, Peter, I know exactly how these events are going to unfold. And you, yourself, are going to deny that you even know me. Once? No. Twice? No. 3 times. 3 times before dawn. He gives the number of occasions, he gives the time frame to it. Why did he do that? Is he pressing the wound? Is he being a little bit vindictive and nasty to try and put Peter in his place? Of course he's not. That's never the heart of Christ. What is he doing? He's allowing Peter to know that in spite of his weakness, in spite of his failings, Christ still loves him. In spite of all that Peter cannot do, Christ is still willing to do. I will lay down my life for your sake, Peter. In spite of all that will unfold. And when Peter looks back after he's made his mistakes, after he's made his failings, and after Christ has restored him, what comfort it is to Peter to know that those failings were already known. And Christ's love was not conditional upon them. He knows our frame. He knows your weaknesses. He knows so often the spirit is willing and the flesh is so weak. But he didn't love us because we were good enough. He loves us and he's good enough. It's not what we deserve. It's what he is willing to freely give. Yes, Peter, there is going to be a death. Yes, Peter, somebody will lay down their life. But it's not you. It's me. Peter thought he knew. Christ knew. He knew what he would do. And he knew why he was doing it. And I thank God this evening that each and every one of us are encompassed in that. He died our death. He paid the price for our sin. Not because we deserve it, but because he loves us. Amen. I'd like to just bring some of the announcements before we have our close.